Hello, it's Tuesday and welcome to Tuesday Live. And tonight it promises to be very, very insightful because we are going to discuss burning issues. Omini Odan is my name. President Muhammadu Buhari has signed the 2020 budget of about 11 trillion naira, tagged Budget of Sustaining Growth and Job Creation. The budget highly applauded as it is the earliest appropriation bill signed in December, and by the Nigeria has returned to one-year budget cycle from January to December 2020 for the first time in 11 years. President Buhari, who signed the budget on his 77th birthday, commended the patriotic zeal by the National Assembly for the quick passage. He has also expressed confidence in his administration's ability to finance the 2020 budget. The President has also directed that the 2021 budget estimate be submitted to the National Assembly by September next year, in keeping with this feat. 2020 budget signed by President Muhammadu Buhari is the first leg of discussions tonight on the program, and the second leg will be on the financial transparency and good governance. Let's take this report from State House correspondent Adamu Sambo.
Flanked by Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, Senate President Ahmed Lawan, Speaker Femi Gbajabiamila, amongst others, President Muhammadu Buhari appends his signature, giving the go-ahead for the implementation of the 2020 budget. The significant and historic event was indeed a promise kept by both the Executive and the 9th National Assembly to return Nigeria to a predictable budget cycle.
I'm very pleased that the National Assembly worked uncommonly long hours in the interest of our people and the national economy to ensure detailed legislative review and passage of the budget within 2 months. I equally thank the 9th National Assembly for supporting important legislations such as the Deep Offshore and Inland Basin Production Sharing Contract Amendments Act and the 2019 Finance Bill. These laws are vital to the successful implementation of the 2020 budget. Now we are well positioned to effectively implement the budget and deliver our promises to Nigerians.
President Muhammadu Buhari described as welcoming the renewed partnership and mutual understanding between the executive and the legislature, saying this harmonious working relationship should not only be sustained but be made the norm. He directed that efforts be made towards ensuring the presentation of the 2021 appropriation bill to the National Assembly by September 2020.
I will work with the 9th National Assembly to give effect to the constitutional, legislative, and other actions that may be necessary to address the various challenges currently associated with our federal budgeting process, including the enactment of an organic budget bill.
The 2020 budget has an increase of 263.95 billion naira over the executive proposal submitted in October this year.
We have examined the adjustments and may revert to the National Assembly with a request for amendment or other relevant amendments. With today's global oil market outlook and our strategic approach to revenue growth, we are optimistic that we will be able to finance the 2020 budget.
Details of the approved budget will be made public by the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning in the coming days. Happy birthday to you. The budget signing ceremony coincided with President Buhari's 77th birthday, and therefore invited guests could not help celebrating him. Oh, he's a jolly good fellow.
Everybody understands the implication of having a budget that is predictable. That tells you that our economy is going to receive a boost, an injection that will see more businesses, more employment opportunities. And of course, we also believe that this is one process that will also support the private sector so well.
There's a synergy between the executive and the legislature like never before. Many are want to criticize that. We believe that we will continue to do what we need to do as a legislature, and the executive will do what they're doing. And the harmony that is between the two, guess who benefits? It's not us, it's not the executive, it's the Nigerian people.
Senate President Ahmed Lawan and the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Femi Bajabiamila, had earlier presented a joint birthday card to the President with a promise to support his genuine efforts at taking Nigeria to the next level. From the State House, Adamu Sambo, NTA News.
What a birthday gift by Mr. President to Nigerians. President Buhari sent the budget for 2020. It's the focus tonight on the program. I have with me in Abuja and also from our Just Network Center, two guests. Here in Abuja is Victor Muru Ako, Acting Chairman, Fiscal Responsibility Commission. Good to have you on the program.
Good evening. Good evening, Nigerians.
And from our Just Network Center, we have Dr. Saleh Bashayi Mumale, Natural Resource Management and Resource Use Conflict Expert and Permanent Commissioner, Kaduna State Peace Commission. He's joining us from our Just Network Center. Good to have you on the program.
Thank you.
Good evening, Nigerians, and welcome.
Okay, staying with you, what would you say, given the fact that Mr. President is signing the 2020 budget coinciding with his 77th birthday anniversary?
Thank you very much for bringing this very topical issue on the discussion topic. This is so important to many Nigerians, particularly the relevance of federal government financing and the importance of budgets in managing economies and enabling the financial managers, as not only in the public sector but also in the private sector, to know the direction in which the government is moving the economy towards, and which has significant impact and implications on what and how the economy will be managed for the next 12 months. I think this is a landmark achievement for this administration. I think it's something that is highly commendable, particularly bearing from even what Mr. President said, in the last 20 years, this is only the fourth time we are signing or we are passing a budget before the commencement of the next financial year. And I don't know whether it was deliberate or by coincidence that His Excellency Mr. President is signing the budget on his 77th birthday. So we congratulate him on the two achievements simultaneously.
I expressed strong confidence that as much as we have the global oil market outlook, he's very confident that the federal government will finance the budget consistently back to back. What's your take on this?
It is very important, particularly when talking within the context of previous experiences in Nigeria. We all know that most of the previous budgets for several years have not been adequately financed, with the releases to MDS being often very low and coming in very late. We have had situations in this country where budgets are released to MDS maybe 2 months to the end of the financial year or 3 months to the end of the financial year, and they are asked to implement those activities they needed to implement over a 12 months period within 3 months. And we have also witnessed situations where budgets were extended to the forthcoming year, possibly saying March or April will be the end of the financial year for the previous budget. This has not actually augured well for the country and for the economy. And it is very important now that Mr. President is giving this assurance. I'm sure he has spoken to most of the operators and managers of the Nigerian economy. He has spoken to a lot of people within the public and the private sector, and they have examined how they are going to finance and implement this budget. We also know some of the strategies that the central bank and the federal government, as announced by the Minister of Finance some few weeks ago, on how they intend to handle and implement the 2020 budget. And we look forward to that very seriously. We do hope to see that commencing January 2020, within the first quarter, all the allocations for the first quarter will be released as early as possible, and activities based on the budgetary provisions will be implemented. Again, it is pleasing with the statements by Mr. President, where he made reference to the differences between the appropriations submitted to the National Assembly and the outcome from the deliberations of the National Assembly resulting in the budget which Mr. President has signed today. What he mentioned was that they have studied the adjustments made by the National Assembly. And I think this is very positive again for the executive-legislative relations, and it means that the input of the larger segment of the Nigerians have counted into the formulation of the budget and its passage. And like Mr. President said, in a democratic system, there is a lot of room for negotiations and for discussions. And like he said, the federal executive will always refer any violation to the budgetary provisions to the National Assembly for deliberations. I think this is a highly welcome development, and we look forward to the speedy implementation of this budget. And I think once we succeed in 2020, we will open wide doors of opportunities for improving the financing sector, for improving the quality of services within the public sector, which will also impact the private sector and enhance or lead to the achievement of the objectives of the budget, which is addressing something that is so dear to Nigerians, and which for some of us, looking at some of the nature of inter-community relations, the level of conflicts we are seeing, tightly related to the weak economic opportunities for our young people, and it is very important that the focus of this budget is growth and job creation. And we really look forward to seeing that this budget implementation will impact growth and job creation.
Just joining me in the Abuja studio too is Bamidele Salami, member House of Representatives. Good to have you on the program tonight.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being here.
And staying on you strictly, budget of sustaining growth and job creation just signed by Mr. President, and Nigeria returning back to the 12 months January to December budget cycle 11 years after. When the administration said this will happen, it sounded like a joke, given the fisticuff we have had over the years between the executive and the legislature. It was a joke, but it has happened, and this budget has come to life. Was it magic? How did it happen?
Well, nothing magical about it. You know, there's always this saying that where there's a will, there's always a way. I think one thing we must take cognizance of is the fact that the National Assembly is predominantly populated by members of the All Progressive Congress. I am of the PDP, just to say. But of course, the majority, more than 2/3 of the membership is of the APC. And in the previous years, what I think happened was that there was no proper synergy between the executive and the legislature, especially the political party, the leadership of the political parties. Because if you have a political party that has a majority in the parliament and controls the federal executive council, it should not be difficult to have some sort of understanding on the input they are bringing into the budget, so that the process of passing the budget, will not take longer than necessary. So I think now, we have the benefit of the National Assembly having majority of its members being of the same political party as that of the executive. But beyond that also is the resolve of the new leadership of the National Assembly, headed by the Senate President and the Speaker of the House of Representatives, to ensure that we do things differently. And from the outset, the Speaker of the House of Reps, Femi Gbadabiamila, has made this one of his core values, one of the major things that he campaigned on, that in trying to do things differently, we must also appreciate the fact that the economy is vital to every other sector of our national life. Whatever happens with the budget, happens with the economy, affects education, affects every other thing. And so he's made it a point that it should be a starting point for doing things differently. And he charged the executive to also ensure that bringing the budget to the National Assembly is not unduly delayed. If you look at the previous budgets, it's either the president brings the budget end of November. I think the last year's budget was presented on the 22nd of December, 2018. So where you have the budget coming in that late, and you want the National Assembly to do a thorough job in considering the provisions of the budget, which runs into trillions of naira, you will definitely need more time to do them. So the legislature this time around also challenged the executive to make sure that whatever we need to do, we do it quickly. Even though the timeline that was set by the House of Reps was for the executive to present the budget in the month of September, so that immediately we resume from the last recess, we started the consideration. That did not happen. But then it came in October, which is also not too bad. And then the leadership of the House decided that, okay, one of the ways we can also ensure that this moves faster is to collaborate, have a collaboration between the two chambers of the National Assembly. So rather than having a committee of the Senate holding a separate budget hearing from now the House of Reps, the two relevant committees, came together, and we agreed on a timetable to ensure that, the two chambers will receive the budget submission from the relevant MDAs. We have the ministers or whoever is heading the agency or department come to defend the budget. Whatever issues you have, you raise them, rather than a minister coming to appear one day in the Senate, 2 days later coming to have, come to the House of Reps. So, and then I must also say that it took a lot of extra work on the part of the legislatures. A lot of us, had to sleep over in the office for so many days to ensure that we work to make the timeline. And to the glory of God and to the credit of the leadership of the National Assembly, I must say, we are able to attain this feat and return Nigeria back to the January to December budget cycle. This, of course, will engender greater confidence in the Nigerian economy. Those who want to do business with this country or with enterprise or business persons, organizations in Nigeria, will consider the fiscal policies of government, and they can also only see this from the budget, that is passed. So I think it's a way to go, and it's good that we are starting. And you can see when the president was signing the budget today, he did say that next year's budget should be ready by September of next year, which means most likely we're even going to have the budget passed and signed into law earlier than we're having it this year, if the relevant MDAs follow the directive of Mr. President to ensure that they have their submissions, on time, and the president is able to also lay the budget before the National Assembly by September of next year. So it's a very good news and a very cheering one.
Okay. Victor Muruako, you are the acting chairman of the Fiscal Responsibility Commission, and Mr. President has talked about the fact that Nigeria now has a predictable budget cycle. But if at the stage of implementation, all the concerns by the legislature, they worked round the clock, like he has said, the budget has been signed today by Mr. President, and Mr. President has also assured Nigerians that this budget will be funded faithfully to timelines, and coming to implementation, if it is not followed by the expression of the legislature, expression of the executive, will it work?
Obviously no, but I must first congratulate Mr. President and say a very happy birthday to him. He has given Nigerians the best gift we can get. It's now left for us Nigerians, the public servants, the legislators, and all stakeholders in the affairs of Nigeria to join hands with Mr. President to ensure that this light is just lit now, bringing back the country to the right budget cycle in line with the Fiscal Responsibility Act. We are very glad at Fiscal Responsibility Commission that we're getting it right, and we congratulate the leadership of the National Assembly. They did a lot of work. We're so impressed, and we're seeing at least that for once the executive and the legislature, they're all reaching out to each other working in tandem. On the issue of oversight implementation, budget implementation, obviously there is that fear in terms of the revenue components of it. But I want to tell you that the Mr. President's economic team, led by Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, the Honorable Minister for Finance, National Planning and Budget, and the team, they have taken steps, a lot of it, and they are still working with the Parliament. The Finance Bill, which is still in the Parliament, is coming up. All these issues will ensure full implementation of the budget. And you know what? The interesting thing about the budget that has been signed into law is that most of the fears about the 2.18 trillion fiscal deficit, about it, has been taken care of. And I want to tell you that the economic team is at work on the implementation. The interesting thing is that for the first time, the capital component of the budget, we have assurance from the economic team that the capital components of the budget, the implementation will start in the first quarter. Unlike in other financial years, fiscal years, when you have the capital components coming up, probably select MDAs in the second quarter or third, but it will not be same this time around. The implementation of both the capital and the recurrent will start in the first quarter, and that's the interesting thing. So I'm not expecting any issue or much issue between the executive and the legislature on the implementation. There have been a lot of reach out between the two arms of the government, and I want to assure you that with the way things are going and with the cooperation from the National Assembly and with the team Mr. President has presently, which is set up the economic team, Nigerians should at least for the first time be in much expectation. And all the indices point to the fact that yes, there will be challenges, particularly in the revenue, but steps are being taken to take care of that. I can assure you that the economic team will be up to it. So that problem may not be as you expect. I want to assure you that even that from the end of the, looking at the deficit, because that's the side that will definitely agitate most analysts as to it. I think with what the team is doing, I think at the end of the day, the country will come to terms that yes, for the first time, Mr. President is actually, and the country is actually at the next level.
Okay, before we tie up this segment, let me just ask you this. What if this routine music, which we believe should be off now, comes up, which is funds have not been released to implement? And you have said that this budget is in consonance with the Fiscal Responsibility Act. Because you go to some MD, they say, look, we would have done this, funds have not been released. What if this happens again?
My brother, I can assure you that the challenges will obviously be there. But the economic team are up with the game. There will not be that story as before. But I know it's not yet to huru. And we shouldn't expect we are yet there. But the point is very clear, that Mr. President have taken a bold shot in ensuring that we'll get back to the budget cycle, and that for the first time, the economic team works assiduously hard to get things done at this time, and the budget has been passed, signed into law without much friction. I'm not expecting that at the end of the day, that the two arms of government will want to throw away the so much goodwill that they would have earned by this action of both arms. I think even the challenges which a lot of analysts will raise have already been looked at in advance, and at the end of the day, we'll be happy for it.
Okay, before we go back to Jos, you talked about the challenges that analysts are going to raise. Now, change is permanent. What has happened in Nigeria currently appears strange to a lot of persons. But the question is, why is it that when we see a congeniality between the legislature and the executive. People see it as defeatist on the part of the legislature within this picture.
Well, thank you very much. Before that, let me just quickly correct something. The finance bill, which was presented by Mr. President together with the appropriation bill, has actually been passed by both chambers of the National Assembly, and waiting the accent of the President,
Yes.
and which I think is very good. You see,
And it's very critical.
the issue is that the legislature is seen everywhere in the world as the voice of the people, and in playing that role, there is an assumption, which to me is not correct, that in playing that role, it means that the legislature should not be found wherever the executive is. Now, that's a very wrong notion. The principles of checks and balances that are entrenched in the presidential system of government guarantees the independence of each arm of government. But if you also look at the provisions of our Constitution, there is also the interdependence of each of the arms of government. The arm of government is an island of its own. Every arm of government will have one thing or the other, to do together, especially if you're working, with a set of goals that are altruistic. Now, it does not mean that there won't be issues where the legislature would disagree with the executive. In fact, there will always be such issues, because as human beings, we are not meant to reason the same way. As an institution, our own job is to make laws. Our job is to oversight. Our job is to represent the people. So where the executive, is to implement those laws that we pass, we also have a duty to oversight those agencies and ministries charged with the responsibility of implementing those laws. And when there are occasions that demand that the legislature calls the executive to question by virtues of the powers conferred on the National Assembly by the Constitution, of course we will do that. Okay. But there is no gain in having, these two critical arms of government wanting to operate on two parallel lines. And then some people expecting somewhere that, every day you sit in the National Assembly, it must be about one quarrel or whatever against whatever is happening in the executive. It's a very wrong notion. There are separation of powers. There is also interdependence of the various arms of government, so that the people will eventually be the greater beneficiary. That needs to be set straight, for those who may not really understand.
Okay.
The people are the focal point of government. Okay. Whatever benefits the people, as long as the executive comes, whatever benefits the people, like they have come now to say we want a budget cycle operate from January to December, of course we can say no to that.
Okay, let's take
because that's for the good of Nigeria.
Edo State. Our first caller tonight is Patrick. Patrick is calling from Edo State. Okay, Patrick is off now. Abdullah is on now from Kogi State. Our guest should be from Lokoja. Hello, Abdullah.
All right. Good evening, Dominic. I just want to say congratulations to the National Assembly for passing the 2020 budget clearly. I'm very happy, and we want Nigerians to back and make Nigerians better as it is. Now everybody is complaining. And now as the budget was passing for this 2020, we want Nigerians to please join hands with Mr. President to ensure the economic of Nigeria is better. Finally, I just want to plead Mr. President not to forget Ajahita Iron and Steel. Let Mr. President do something about it. Thank you, and God bless Nigeria.
Thank you, Abdullah. And if you're just joining us, the focus tonight, we are taking two legs. The first leg tonight is President Buhari signing the 2020 budget, and our second leg will be the financial transparency and good governance. You can join the conversation. Our phone lines are open. Our Twitter handle is at Tuesdaylive NTA. So going to Kaduna, where Dr. Saleh Bashir Momale is Jos, please. Sorry, not Kaduna, Jos. Doctor, if I ask you again, now with what has happened at the national level, if this synergy does not play out at the state level, wouldn't we have some kind of disconnect?
It is very apt and very relevant and very important especially as the federal budgets and the state budgets significantly impact on the citizens of this country. And many of the states will be challenged to cue in to what has happened at the federal level. It is pleasing that many states have already achieved this. For example, my own state, Kaduna State, the Executive Governor Malam Nasir El-Rufai has already signed the 2020 bill, which is quite pleasing, and I think it is in line with the policy administrations of many other governments that are trying to pursue good governance and improve the quality of services. So it's very important that many of the state governments cue in, but in any case, the federal government is the major pace setter. And again, many of the institutions that influence the macroeconomic indices of most of the sectors of the Nigerian economy are more impacted by the federal budgets than the state budgets. So I believe that where some of the major and most important states government are able to cue in, and we have many states passing in their budgets within this the month of December and January, and we have this national synergy, then Nigeria will be far, far better for it. And like Honorable Victor rightly said, it is very important for us to understand the dynamics of governance and the importance of cooperation, the importance of engagements, and the importance of working together. Yes, of course, the executive arm and the legislative arm often differ. For example, most of the executive council at the national level always look at national level interests, they look at national level priorities. However, members of the representatives, House of Representatives, members of the Senate are representative of constituent parts. Each one of them has a constituency to defend, a constituency to project its needs, a constituency to project its requirements. Therefore, you always find members rightly advancing for the cause of the constituent parts, which some of the federal budgets, like the DG earlier said, we may have financial constraints, we may have budgeting constraints, raising, financing all of this is always problematic. So we have to set priorities. So certainly, yes, it's right for the members of the National Assembly to agitate, to differ with the executive. But engagement, positive engagement, and working together is not a sign of weakness, but a sign of strength. And I think this should be a strong message, not only to the National Assembly, but also to most of the state assemblies, that cooperation, what is wrong is, let me say, cooperation that is not beneficial to the citizens, but any cooperation that will benefit, will lead to enhanced service delivery, will lead to improved productivity, will lead to speedy execution of projects, is a beneficial partnership that Nigerians must urge. And I think this is where I will strongly urge MDAs not to begin to work in the implementation of these budgets without properly informing, engaging the National Assembly. This is very important. They should set their priorities. They should be briefing the relevant committees of the Senate, the relevant committees of the House of Representatives on the progress they are making, the challenges they are facing. I think these are some of the issues that bring some of these negative perceptions and stereotypes. But once there is this continuous communication, coordination, and engagement, most of these issues will be addressed. Again, like the DG said, probably yes, the deficit budget is very difficult to manage. You have to start looking for ways and avenues to get additional funding to support that. Again, some of the projections, the revenues projected in the budget were financial projections. The revenues may not likely come the way it is projected. Again, Nigerians need to be kept abreast by the executive arm for them to understand that, yes, although this amount has been budgeted within this quarter for this set of activities, the revenue generated within this quarter is this, and therefore only this % of the capital budget, particularly the capital budget, will be implemented within this period. Once we do that, Nigerians will see relevance, they will see value, they will appreciate and recognize what the government is doing and see the relevance of the partnership between the various arms of government.
Well, thank you so much. He has made a fundamental commitment that says cooperation that is not beneficial to the citizens. But let's take this call from Kabil. Kabil is calling in from Jos, Plateau State. Hello, Kabil.
Okay.
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Good evening to you all in the studio.
Good evening.
Well, I want to commend the National Assembly for promising us the Nigerians that this is what they will do, and they fulfill their promises. And apart from that, Mr. President, for signing the budget. But still yet, it is part of their own duty to make sure that they play the role of that oversight. Because we want them to make sure that the budget is executed to the maximum. Because we don't want the situation whereby Nigerians will keep on suffering, because things are changing actually, and Nigerians are having more hope in this government. So we need them to please.
Okay, thank you so much. That's more can take on cabinet. But before we wrap up this segment, let me ask this, Honorable. In the course of implementing this budget, what the guest from just said, cooperation between the executive and legislature that will not be beneficial to the citizens, what if it plays out?
Well,
it's fundamental here.
Well, certainly I want to assure you that there will not be any form of cooperation that will not be beneficial to the people.
But it has been there before.
Like I've said, well, maybe in some instances, but there are isolated cases. And what I see with the 9th, assembly is that we believe we have a very heavy burden on us, and the burden is this: we have made a commitment to the people that we are going to be a house of reforms. There will be a house that will do things differently and in a better way. Now, when you say that, there's an expectation that you are putting yourself in the line of defending the interests of the people, rather than doing what was assumed, to be the normal practice in the past, or people going there to fend for themselves and defending their own interests. And you see, one other good thing about this, idea of having the budget cycle starting from January, like the DG said, is that the implementation of both the capital, component of the budget, the recurrent component starts the same time. And as a house of, as a legislature, we operate through committees. So each committee of the National Assembly also begins its work almost immediately, which is the work of ensuring that the monies appropriated for specific projects and programs are applied to those programs and projects as at when due.
Thank you so much.
So I assure you that, you start seeing a lot of activity beginning from January, to follow the money and be sure that the money actually is spent on what they are, what they are meant for.
That's now a wrap on this segment of the program, which is President Buhari signing the 2020 budget. When we return on our second leg, we shall be looking at financial transparency and good governance. We are not done yet. Don't go away.